Ramsey. We've got a new investigation for you. Something your department should have a look at. I'm sending over the information as we speak. You'll need to travel to North Carolina. Pack your bags.
Throughout human history, the appearance of luminous orbs in the sky has ignited wonder, fear, and speculation. These ethereal lights, hovering, darting, or pulsing with a strange intelligence, transcend folklore and defy easy categorization. They challenge our understanding of reality itself, stirring questions about consciousness, dimensions, and the unknown forces shaping our existence. What if these phenomena are not mere anomalies, but deliberate messages, encoded in light and mystery? Amid the myriad of accounts of contact and unexplained encounters, few are as polarizing or profound as the story of Chris Bledsoe. His journey took a dramatic turn in 2008 with an extraordinary event. An encounter not just with luminous orbs, but with its occupants. And what followed was a cascade of disbelief and ostracism, as his family became the target of ridicule, relegated to the fringes of their community. This eventually inspired Chris to write his best-selling book, UFO of God. In it, he recounts the events that upended his life. But more importantly, he unpacks the spiritual and existential questions those experiences forced him to confront. Bledsoe's story isn't just about UFOs or alien craft. It explores the deeply spiritual, intertwining divine intervention, ancient archetypes, mysterious healing abilities, prophetic messages, and even a burning tree.
This tree just spontaneously combusted in our backyard.
It's a modern-day odyssey. But this is no mere personal account. Bledsoe's experiences have captured the attention of powerful institutions, including the US government, and even the Vatican. Why would agencies rooted in geopolitics and theology take an interest in a rural man's encounters with orbs? Could the truths here be so profound that they might blur the lines between science and religion? In this investigation, we'll trace the arc of Bledsoe's encounters, from his initial contact to the intricate spiritual revelations that followed. What is it about his story that bridges the gap between the skies and the sacred? And why does it matter now more than ever? Oh my God. What? Oh my God, look at that. Okay, just landed in Wilmington, in sunny Wilmington.
Hello.
This is Ryan Bledsoe. We're gonna go see his dad, we're gonna hang out. And yeah, this is the kind of weather we got landing in Wilmington right now. We've driven through a torrential storm.
It's like a tropical storm or something that passed through today, but we're good. We're on the other side of the rain.
Almost there. Time is it's 8:30 at night. I'll keep you posted. Good morning. Got in last night and we spent some time with Chris and Ryan's mom and chatted till about 3 in the morning. Had some lively conversations about the topic, the phenomenon and everything, and just catching up, really getting to know each other, which was a lot of fun. Today we're going to be filming some stuff here, some interview stuff, and then we're going to be heading back to Ryan's house where I'll end up doing his podcast, also talking to Ryan, finding out more about the story. A wholesome family, just super caring, super loving. They allowed me into their home last night, and I mean, we just had a great time talking. No expectations, not expecting anything except a good conversation and just hanging out. So, good morning.
The day of the event that changed everything was January the 8th of 2007. I was a builder, always been a builder. My wife's family were builders, my dad was a builder. other than growing up on farming and building is what I did. Career was to be a pilot, a commercial pilot, which I have achieved that. But I quit flying because of having children. I wanted to be home with my children. So I was in the building business in a big way when Desert Storm and the 911 thing happened. 911. 2001, I was caught with 72 houses under construction. I was a big builder, a lot of houses. We built 100 a year. So now I'm with these houses and the World Trade Center collapse and being in Fayetteville, North Carolina, which is home of Fort Bragg, Fort Liberty, they call it now, predominant military town. It dried up the housing market. Nobody's buying.
Production by 1.5 million barrels per day.
Really, you're seeing just broad-based declines across all of the major technologies.
And that means life, as most Americans know it, is about to change, in some cases dramatically.
They don't know if they're going to be in Iraq or Iran or where they're going to be next week. So the military just shut down. So here I am with nearly $100,000 a month going out in interest and overhead, and no houses selling. So I saw a train wreck coming. I was suffering with Crohn's disease since my early 20s, 26 or 7, and developed that. And by now 2001, I went from happy and, living on a golf course and a big old house with a pool and kids playing golf at the country club, I grew to all of a sudden, I see the end coming. I'm losing everything. And I did. I lost it all. By 2005, I had gone through about $18 million worth of apartments and condo or houses, everything I had, and rental property to pay the interest and all, until eventually sold the company. I'm sick with Crohn's at the worst point of my life because the more you stress, the worse that disease gets. Recovering from a near-death experience in the hospital by a doctor that over-medicated me to try to get back in the workforce. Now I'm not able to work. I'm dealing with this sickness and now the worst depression. I'm starting over. I'm 46 years old now. I've got to apply for free lunches for my kids in school. That's how bad it got. And so January the 8th of 2007, I had finally started back trying to work a bit. Right after Christmas, my crew went down to the coast and finished the house and brought a check back. So they show up to my house that day of the 8th, and they want to celebrate. Called me about 2 o'clock, said, "Hey, boss, we'd like to go fishing. You want to come celebrate with us?" I said, "Why not?" It's just me and Chris Jr., my wife, and other 3 kids were out of town or with their mom. And so we waited on them. Well, they called me. I went to their house. I picked them up. They're between me and the river's 3.5 miles away by car. And their houses were kind of in between that. So it wasn't out of my way much to pick them up. And plus I had the only 4-wheel drive that could get down in this bottom. So now we're walking along. We're parked on the river. We crossed a cornfield. And I kind of give you an idea of where we were. This is cornfield on our left. And in the middle of this field is a little two-rut road that drives across this field to the far side to the trees. And when you get to those trees, the river's down in there. So you go down a hill through a gate, a metal gate, sets right on the crest of the hill. This is flat, cornfield. And the river dives off down in. And this gate's sitting right up there on the peak of that hill, right? You don't notice it till you're down looking up. All you see is the sky and this big old metal gate, right? I drove down in there about a 1/4 mile down to the end of a cul-de-sac. We parked. By 3 o'clock, they were sitting on the bank fishing. And I told them, I said, "I'm going to walk down in the forest and just meditate. I'm not into fishing." Didn't tell them what I was thinking. I'm crying out, "Lord, help me. What do I do?" I'm 46, I'm sick, can't afford to feed my children now, I need help. So this is the mindset. This is the important part that everyone understands of what I was dealing with. So I go in the woods, I find a big old tree along the river on a gully, and I sit down for about an hour. Now it's 4:30, 4:45, and it's getting dark in the woods. The sun sets at 5:30 in January around here, so down under that canopy, it's already dark in there. So I walked back out to where they were fishing and asked them, did they want to stay or fish some more? And they wanted to fish. We just got here, boss. Let's fish more. So I said, okay, we need to get a fire going. It's going to get cold tonight. Got a fire going, and about 10 minutes to 5 now. I told them, once I knew they had the fire and they're sitting there on the bank with the fire, they're facing the water with their poles and the fire right behind them. I was always an organizer, trying to organize people. So I thought, they're okay. Now I'm going to walk up the hill. So I told them that's what I was going to do. I was going to sit up there to dark and watch for wildlife to come out in the field. Maybe a deer would walk out, or a coyote, or turkeys. Or no tell them what, but that was the excuse I used. All the while, I'm struggling mentally. What do I do? How do I feed my children? I'm depressed, worse than ever. Struggling with thoughts. Just a bad place to be. I'm broke. I have nothing. Anyhow, and I got a little spooked because I heard something walking in the woods beside me, which nothing really spooks me at night like that, as I grew up hunting and from a young age in the woods and never afraid. But all of a sudden, I'm got a little spooked because when I'd stop, it would stop. And I couldn't see in the woods, it's so thick, but I could hear it. And it sounded like 2 feet at times walking. And so I'd stop and I'd look, and I got on my knees 3 times to look under the shrubs, trying to see past the barrier of shrubs that line most of the roads and fields around here. So I get on down to the dog leg left toward the west. So I'm parallel in the river for a little more than 1/8 of a mile. Now I got 1/8 of a mile to go up to the gate. And I'm facing west, so I can see the sky. And the sky's not black, the stars aren't out, but I knew the sun was probably beneath the tree. So I walked up that hill, and when I got within 30 feet of the top of that hill, I began to see what I thought was the sun, the top of it. And the higher I got up that hill, the more of the sun I could see. And by the time I got to where I could see the whole thing, I thought, man, that's weird. I could see what looked like the sun, the same size. When you can look at it in the evening, it doesn't hurt your eyes. But it was more blood red. And it looked like fire going around it. And for the first minute, I thought, I'd struggle with it. This got to be the sun. And so I take a few more steps up that hill, and now there are 2 of these. I can see much more wider view, and now I've got 2 suns that look just alike, and they're just above the trees, just beyond the road. So there's 200 yards of field, and they're probably 100 yards behind that, up just above the trees, just sitting there. 2 big glowing orange, tangerine orange, the blood red, it kind of in that mix of colors, and they're swirling around and around fire, and little tips of flames are shooting off in all directions. So I'm freaked out now. I never seen anything like that. Never thought about UFOs. All I thought about was losing my business and being sick and dealing with that. So I squatted down and hid myself. I had still more hill in front of me. I'm not to the top yet. So I'm using that as my advantage. I duck down and I look up and they're there. I duck. I don't know how long I sit there doing that. But it wasn't long that I had gotten afraid enough that I got worried about the boys down the hill and Chris Jr. So I thought, I've got to run. I just can't take this any longer. you know. I didn't know it. I knew I was there. So by saying that is a very big part of this. For example, if you see a light fly by, a star or a satellite or whatever it is, even though it's an orb, you see it. It's different than just seeing something, than something responding and seeing you and coming in your space and say, I see you. So now you got this power that you can't imagine that has you on its radar. So I turned to run. And when I did, I had to look back one more time. So I actually turned my body while I'm hiding, squatted down behind that hill, and I've turned real slow, and I'm facing down, and I know I've got to go down that way. No flashlight through these weeds and ruts, you know. So I'm making this plan to get away. I committed. I'm running now. I had to look back one more time, and so I raised up, I looked back to take off, and that's when everything changed. This third setting sun right above me just appeared and shot down the very minute. It was so timed that I knew without a shadow of a doubt that it saw me and that I was on its radar. And that's when the chills set in and the fear set in. And the feeling of being like a lab rat or, you know, something that I couldn't get away from, something that's got me. So next thing I remember is the last 50 feet to the fire. I can see the fire is very low now. It's just a tiny little fire and 3 men standing around it looking down, no longer fishing. And I'm coming out of the dark, right? They don't see me coming, but I can see them. And when I got really close to them, I shouted, I said, hey, guys, you would never guess what I just saw. Immediately, one of the guys said, where in the, and I won't say the words, he said, have you been? I said, what do you mean? I was just up at the hill. No, you weren't. I said, yeah, I was. I haven't gone but 20 minutes. Oh, no, you've been gone all night. I was like, no way. I was gone 20 minutes. No, you've been gone all night. Then I realized Chris Jr.'s not there. So I said, where's Jr.? They said, well, he's been gone 2 hours looking for you. We can't find him either. So I took off from them running, shouting for him. So he's in the far back of the cul-de-sac, missing. That's the last time they saw him. So I ran back there shouting for him. Worried he's lost in a big head of woods that is very rugged and goes for 60 miles to the beach or more of just woods.
In this clip taken from a podcast hosted by one of Chris's sons, Ryan, called Bledsoe Said So, Ryan and his co-host Nick get Chris Jr. to open up about his experience for the first time in over a decade. Now, Chris Jr.'s discomfort in recalling the encounter immediately becomes apparent as he repeatedly fails to vocalize the event, which is clearly still very traumatic.
Well, so it started out, we were, you know, all fishing on the river. And
Right.
we got to wondering, where's Dad at? So I'm with a couple guys, and down this dark path, I happen to see these 2 red glowing balls of light.
It was really dark out, and I happened to be looking down that way, and I saw these 2 orbs, you know, about this big, about waist high off the ground, just floating. So all I could see was these 2 bright red orbs side by side.
Where were they when you first saw them?
Down the path there, coming down the road.
Yeah, 2 just little, you know, they're not very big. Just a ball of light, a red ball of light. Talking to this old fella, Gene, he's the one that was like,
The rat
you know,
was
it was so
pissing on a
quiet I
cotton
could
ball?
hear a rat,
Cotton ball,
piss
yeah.
on a piece of cotton.
Nothing.
Animals.
It was quiet. It was quiet. It was just, you could have heard a rat piss on a piece of cotton. That's how quiet it was.
I'm telling these guys about this, and they're like, oh, I don't see nothing. Quit playing with me. They literally did not see these red balls of light. I was pointing.
You saw them and tried to tell the guys
I tried to
first?
Yes,
And
I
then
tried
you
to
went
point it out
after
to them. No. They got in the truck and left me out there.
Oh, looking for Dad.
Yeah.
Oh, because Dad was missing for 4 hours.
Yeah. I thought I would stay just in case he came back. They got in the truck and left. And I knew these things were in the woods, you know, or I knew they were still there. So I just went into the wood line, you know, thinking I'm going to get a better view of them you know, I was by myself. And I'm going to get back on track. Yeah, so I went in the wood line and I saw these two little guys come out of the woods right along the side of the right where the river was. I'm sorry.
Dude, that's totally fine.
And then next thing you know, I didn't see any more orbs. I just saw these little creatures come walking out the woods. It was really dark. It just looked like little creatures, little skinny. And I could see you know, I guess their body, but not like what they were wearing.
I'm struggling with all this. You know, I'm a panicked dad now. Where's my son? So I start making my way into the thickness, the shrubbery, stick around the edge to get into the woods. I didn't have a flashlight. I'm panicked, shouting for it. I thought if I could get in there, I could find him.
All right, I was standing in the wood lines and I saw these.
Take your time, bro.
Yeah, take your time. We want you. Your comfort level is the most important thing here, dog. Seriously.
Well, I've never talked about it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I get the worst anxiety when I think about it. And that's why I stay strapped. Okay, well, I saw these two little guys. I never can talk about it.
It's good, man. We can seriously stop if you want to.
And about that time, these two little 3 foot tall, 3 or 4 foot tall, little tiny little midget men come out of the woods. And they're tiny little people. Very dark, almost translucent, you know, like a shadow almost. They had big red eyes.
Yeah.
They were abnormally large for their size.
Yeah.
Their head was, it didn't look symmetrical. I don't know how to put into words what I'm thinking. I'm in the wood line and they come out of the woods for me, and I'm across this little field, right? So they're on the riverside and I'm on the opposite side, right in the edge of the woods. They come straight for me. They knew I was there. They could see me in the wood line, and one of them was looking at me at all times.
He was describing these creatures that would look at him and paralyze him. Right? One was picking up cans and bottles and looking at them, sticks, and put them on the ground, on their hands and knees, while one was always staring at him. That's what scared him to death.
He was looking me right in the eyes. I felt like he was the whole time. He was staring me down, one of them, and the other one. I remember seeing him bend over and pick up a bottle, and he just kind of looked at it and sat it back down. Wow. There was a little glass bottle. I remember the way that their eyes moved. It always kind of freaked me out. One of them would just kind of go down and come back up, and then the other one would. Like, one eye was always open at all times.
Yeah.
Like crazy as it sounds. Yeah. But it was flat on the bottom. Oh. Exactly.
Yeah.
It was flat, like the eyelid itself. You know, it would come down and go back up. And at all times when this was happening, I couldn't scream or yell. You know, I couldn't cry or run or whatever. I was trying to do all these things.
Couldn't move. Because
I knew something was up. I'm looking at these little tiny dark looking guys, and I can't do anything. This is why I didn't ever, you know, want to talk about it, because my brain scrambles into
It's the only way you can get over it.
The truck comes back down the path that
Dad's truck that the guys had taken to find Dad.
They look over really fast at this truck that's coming down this long path, and they both look over at it really fast, and they haul ass. They run and on all fours into a pile of cut down trees. Dad pulls up, and these guys, and they're hollering for me. I could hear him saying, "Junior."
I hear it. I'd walked about 5 to 8 feet into those bushes is where I almost stepped on him, and he come up from under those bushes grabbing onto me, and he's in shock. He's in panic.
Like, they're right over there, and they don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
And he's like, "Where have you been, Daddy? Why'd you leave me? Why'd you leave me? I've been looking for you all night." I said, "Son, I ain't been gone but 20 minutes. "No, Dad, you've been gone all night." And he's weeping, and he's crying. And he's like, "These creatures, they scared me, Dad. They scared me bad." I'm like, "Creatures?" He said, "Yeah, these creatures, they had red eyes, and I couldn't move, and I was paralyzed." And he's telling me all this, right? "I want to go home. I want to go home. Just take me home." This is all he's saying.
I'm trying to explain to him, and me and Dad both said at the same time, essentially, I saw a UFO, and I was saying I just saw like a little alien or whatever.
Yeah.
We both were saying that at the same time to one another.
So I lead him back to the fire where these 3 guys are standing, and now their eyes are big as pie plates because they're hearing Junior talking, freaking out about creatures, and I've been gone all night. They've been looking for me, and I'm talking about these big balls of fire in the sky. So about that time, one of the guys with me shouts and says, "Look," and we all look up, and there were 8 or 9 stars that looked like stars, the brightest ones you see in the night sky. They just appeared in a big circle above us.
And somebody points up in the sky, and we all look up, and there are a ton of different little lights in the sky, and they all are doing this weird thing.
And they flew out away, and they come back together, and they went around in circles. It looked like somebody choreographed them, was directing them how to work.
See what looked like bright stars. They were scattered one, across the tree line. And you could just see them descending slowly.
And then a couple of them shoot down over the side of the river.
And it just like dropping, like I said, it looked like a piece of hot steel or something,
They were orangish, and then you could see separate other colors.
It was orange and maybe yellow.
I remember being one on the left, right, one in the middle, and one toward the left.
From that tree to this tree, they were right there. You could see them just perfect right there.
And we're sitting there looking at this, and then 3 of these things come out of the sky all the way to the ground and landed in front of us on the other side of the river.
And that's when it freaked me out. And I saw, "Hey, guys, look. Y'all see them? Y'all see these?"
I got so paranoid I opened my pocket knife.
And that's when the panic set in,
Okay, we gotta go. We just all loaded up in the truck.
Pandemonium sets in, and we all jump in my truck, leaving fishing poles and everything, and we took off out of there. We get back up to the top of that hill, come over that hill very fast, almost with airborne going over it, accelerating up that hill. And I had to jam on the brakes because in front of us now are the same 3 orbs, but 2 of them are in the exact same spot, the first 2 red balls of fire. But the 3rd one that appeared and came down is the one that took me for 4 hours. Now it's sitting in the road, blocking our path to the highway.
There was a light right on. It was a big light.
It was just another big glowing light.
It was like a...
But then, like I said, it just kind of just...
Hold your hand up like that, kind of try to remember it.
Well, from a distance, I could put my hand around it like that, maybe.
It's about 5 feet off the ground, just sitting there, hovering. And it looked like an egg or a football laying on its side. Not standing up, but like so. It was more like a tic-tac, sort of. I didn't know what a tic-tac was, but what got the government on me
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the SA.
was when I did report this. I reported the length to being approximately 45 to 50 feet long. It's shaped like a pill or egg or a football, the light going around this thing was mesmerizing. I mean, it was like this. These blades look like crystals, the light actually just doing this around and around it. It's just sitting there doing that. Everybody's freaked out.
I was just kind of in my own world.
Some of them are crying. Some of them are begging. We didn't have a phone.
But they were pointing at shit and screaming and yelling, and it was fucking chaos.
So, happened to be a house back in there to our right. I drove across the ditch up in their yard, tried to signal them. Their TV was playing through the front door. You could see it. Their cars were there. Nobody answered the door. The very next day, the guys went back to get our fishing poles and stuff. They went over to his house because they knew him. They played football, softball together. One of the guys. He said, we were home all night. You didn't come to my house. Like, yeah, we were. We were blowing the horn at your front door. All this was investigated by NASA, people from NASA, and the intelligence world, and very thoroughly. About that time, after we discovered nobody's there, I back out of their property, back out on the road. Now I'm back facing this thing, and we're not going anywhere. It's blocking the road. About that time, we heard 3 gunshots. And on the third shot, this thing pivots, and here it comes down the highway and comes right up over my truck, silent. And it was so low, I could have shot it with a slingshot through the top of the sunroof. I mean, no sound. So once it passed overhead, it kind of pivoted to the north and fired off like it was out of a cannon and went out of sight. So I hit the gas, and away we're going. We're going home. And the weird thing was, I'm no longer afraid. I'm in this different... My mind seems like time had slowed down, and I'm looking at everything from a different perspective. I'm not afraid. I'm curious. I'm watching them, like, wondering why they're so afraid. They were freaked out, everybody, badly. But one of those unique things about this, the miracles that happen, is on the way to take them home, between where we were and the first guy's houses are 2 miles away, and then about 4 miles, 5 maybe, to the follow. But a mile from where we were is where I was shot when I was 10, had the first near death. And a little less than a mile from where we were is where I read about it in the book about my first wife was killed in a car wreck. Turned her car end over end and was thrown out. And I happened to be riding down that road. I'd been out of town all day, come home, and I found her. Didn't know it was her until I stumbled on her. Just saw the car laying on its side. And she died right there when we held her. And so I'd felt guilty all my life about that I should have been home. It wasn't my fault. I wasn't there. So everything, a person, and the the trauma of seeing her mangled up, it's bad. But the joy is right when we got to that spot, and we got to pass by the spot to drop these guys off, this thing, huge thing, was hovering right directly over top where I found her. And I slammed on the brakes because it was right in front of, I mean, it was literally, we were almost up under it, right? It was there above us and just above the power line. And it freaked everybody out so bad, they started beating on the seat and screaming, go, go, go. And I jammed on the brakes. I'm trying to stop. I want to get out and look because I'm reliving that whole thing that happened 20 years before. Mm-hmm. And this vision came into my head. They did this. And they told me that, it's not your fault. You don't need to worry about that anymore. She's just fine. So that was the first time in 20 years that I felt relief from it not being my fault. Now I hit the gas. I wanted to stop. They wouldn't let me. I drop them off. I take them on home and I drop them off. So Chris Jr. and I go back home. And we get home about 11:30, and he's running through the house like a madman, turning lights on. I'm in my study trying to find out if it's been on TV, if the military's coming. And about that time, I hear this sound go over my house, and it sounded like a helicopter. And I just knew that Fort Bragg was, because the way it came was from Bragg, and the way it was going was directly to the river. So in my mind, Fort Bragg's on the way. Yeah, here they come. My dad raised dogs all his life. He hunted with dogs till he died. He still had 15 hound dogs in a kennel behind his house. We lived side by side back then on 6 acres, and behind the house was a head of woods, and then there was the dog kennel. All of a sudden, all these dogs start barking. So I thought immediately somebody's breaking into Dad's garage. So I told Chris Jr., I got to go out there and see who's breaking into Dad's shop. He's like, no, Dad, please don't go out there. Don't go, begging me. And I had a Chesapeake Bay Retriever sitting on the back steps, hair standing up, and she's barking toward the direction of the kennels. I said, look, I'm going to send her ahead of us. We'll sneak down the path and see what we can see. And he did not want to go. But when I opened that door, I'm going. He grabs me by the back of the shirt, and Rosie took off went out about 40 yards and looked back to see if we were coming, and she went on in. So Junior and I would make our way quietly across our property, back into the woods, and up. We snuck up to the dog kennel. And now it's so loud. You got 15 hounds and a retriever barking every breath, and we're standing where I can see them. And I said, I'm going to send Rosie in the woods. We're trained dogs. They do whatever I can make her attack somebody. And you and I need to run back down the path to the yard, to this big oak tree, and we'll use it to hide behind and let the dog come on out and push whatever's in there out. I take off running. He's got me by the shirt. We get to the grass, out of the woods, out onto the back centipede. And I got to make a left now, hard left to go to the back corner to cut this dog off, and I slipped because of frost on the grass, and Junior turned loose. I thought he was just turned loose and was still behind me. Mm-hmm. I got 100 yards to run, right? So I run on back to this back of this property, thinking he's behind me. Undoubtedly, he had had all the excitement he could handle, and he made a right and went back to the house and went in the house. Well, I went left and went to the back of the property. So I'm still thinking he's behind me, right? And I run up to this tree. I hear the dogs coming. I'm in front of the dog now. And I run up to this tree in a full run because it's just going down quick, right? And I run and I hit the tree, stop myself, and I'm panting, trying to be quiet because they could hear, any animal or whatever, hear that would go the other way. The very second I run up to that tree, I'm trying to catch my breath. I turn around and I look to see if Junior's coming on up behind me. And this is when everything changed. There was no longer Junior back there, but behind me, about 4 feet behind me, is a very little creature that he described on the river with the glowing red eyes. So now, behind me, 4 feet behind me, is this little translucent, glowing toddler, no higher than that. It's glowing the color of the moon, like the moon, that soft white glow. But it was so shiny on the outside. The outer surface of this being was shiny like glass, gleaming. And underneath this shirt, or whatever it had on, was a triangle shape, like a triangle. Very important symbol to some people in the government. I immediately thought I was dead. I was so afraid when I saw that, and that's my back's to it, right? I'm holding onto the tree, and I'm panting, and I see it, and I'm like, oh, my God. So I didn't want to get closer to it So I stuck myself even right against a tree, and I used it to turn myself around, and I dropped my hands down, and I looked at it, and I said, I surrender. I don't mean you no harm. I thought it was gone. And here's the dog still coming, closer and louder and louder and louder, and she's just in the woods good now, and this thing's behind me. And when I dropped my hands, it said, you don't understand. We're not here to hurt you. We're here to help you. And about that time, the dog comes busting out of the forest behind me, right out of this tree. I knew that was where it was coming. And this being just vanished in front of me. And the dog ran right on by. Ran a quarter mile. I could still hear her running, barking.
You heard this in your head?
No, I could hear the dog barking.
No, but the voice telling you?
The voice was an audible voice in my head. I heard it sound like a man deeply. Walked back to the house, contemplating it. Should I tell Chris Jr. what I just saw? He's afraid already. I don't want to tell him more. So I took that to the house and was very quiet about it.
This also sparked Chris's first miraculous healing event, which he says cured him of his Crohn's disease.
From that point forward, that day, I never took another pill for Crohn's disease for the rest of my life. I have no symptoms. I've been tested at Chapel Hill University. Where did it go? My book's titled UFO of God because of that very night. I'm crying out to God, help me. And these UFOs come out of the sky, and these weird-looking beings with glowing eyes, and healed me and forever changed my life.
There were several other healing events that had also taken place, which we'll get into a bit later. I then asked Chris if he could take me back to that day in the woods. What happened in those 4 hours of missing time?
For the first 14 months, I could not think about it. And you could not convince me that I missed any time. My son and the guys with me were the ones that convinced me because they walked back to and they showed me to where they had moved the truck. And I had massive headaches thinking about it.
Up to that point, which was at least a year between the initial experience and then it was more like a year and a half. He would sometimes pass out if he even tried to think about what happened. He would scream in his sleep, have nightmares, cold sweats. There were some times we would film him. Like, he's talking about all these strange things, and it was like night terrors plagued him. He couldn't remember.
And I would begin to talk in my sleep at night, a lot of times shouting, screaming, afraid, things they were showing me. So they brought in a psychiatrist from Harvard, a Harvard-trained psychiatrist that was trained under Dr. John Mack, Dr. Michael O'Connell. We loved him. And he said, Chris, they put a block in your brain that I'm going to remove that block, but I'm going to program you to remember everything that happened. And so immediately I began to recall things that happened, but it was all images of things I couldn't make sense of. What I began to remember was, first off, was how they come and got me. That orb that shot down as an orange ball beside the other two orange balls, it came straight at me and it shifted into this white egg, came right up over top of me, above me, and I look up and all I could see was this ball of light that just engulfed me around me. And next thing I know, I'm in a black room and I could hear my breath. And I was panicked and I was afraid. I couldn't see anything in either direction. I couldn't even see me. I got so afraid I could hear myself. And this light started to appear around me like a spotlight from above. And I could see completely around me, my feet and all of white. But I could stick my hand in the blackness and it would disappear. Couldn't see outside of the light around me. And soon this light started receding back to where I began to see these three shadowy figures. They were there with me. And that began a virtual tour. It was a beautiful experience, but they're describing everything that they were showing me. So I was basically in an orb, felt like a bubble that I could touch the walls, but I couldn't see them. I could see the stars under me and feel the floor, but couldn't see the floor. Is that clear? I began to always see different places in the U.S. They would be up, looking down, telling me what I'm seeing. One particular thing that stuck out was us looking at the pyramids in Egypt. And I'm seeing the Sphinx from the rear. So we're up in the air looking over the pyramids at the rear end of the Sphinx. And then I see Hathor's temple, and I see all these engravings about nature and about animals and birds, and their deities are animals and birds, right? I didn't understand any of it, but this is what they were showing me.
These memories surface during hypnotic regression, which you can listen to in its entirety on the Bledsoe Said So podcasts, which I've linked below. And these images were from that regression, which was featured on a TV documentary. In this documentary, UFOs Over Earth, the Fayetteville Incident, after regressing Chris through hypnosis and submitting him to a stress detector test, despite the multiple eyewitness accounts, they eventually deemed that Chris wasn't being entirely truthful.
It was tough. It was tough not to believe him.
There is no doubt in my mind what I saw. Whatever this machine says, I don't know. And don't care. But I know what I saw.
And this documentary then began what Chris refers to as the 5 years of darkness, which led him to eventually write his best-selling book, UFO of God.
I was a deacon in the Pentecostal Holiness Church. Imagine that. And me talking about, UFOs. Automatically, you're playing with Satan himself. That's the devil. So now, for the next 5 years, this is what I call 5 years of darkness.
It changed everybody in our house. For the first time in our life, we were not open. We avoided the dinner table together.
Our marriage and our family was on the verge of splitting up over this thing.
So it's been tough, but it's not a train wreck yet.
The community is accusing me of being crazy, accusing me of endangering my family, that I'm bringing the devil into my house. They called social services on me, trying to separate me from my family. They tried to get my kids to be out of the house. I shouldn't be around them. So and my kids are at home now, and here's the thing, the phenomenon never left. From that day forward, it didn't never leave. It was at my house, and I experienced it in the woods. And now when my wife and kids are coming home, they're getting the daylight scared out of them because I've got orbs in the house. I've got beings walking, shadowy beings. My wife will tell you, she followed them through the house, and they go through the walls and stuff. Always an orb would appear, a flash, and then these shadowy beings step out when they walk through. 5 years of this, my daughter's coming home from school crying. The teachers are calling them out in front of the classmates, and my boys were all 13, 15, and 17. Now they're made fun of in school. They were at dating age. So 5 years of this had turned into affecting my children in such a way that I was angry.
Ryan weighs in on what that period was like for him.
I remember getting off the school bus days after it happened. My grandpa immediately told me when I got to his house, he said, "Boy, your daddy's been smoking dope in the woods and he's been seeing green booger men." I was like, "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" And he said he's been going crazy. He's been seeing green booger men in the woods. So that night when my dad gets home, I start asking him about the green booger men, and he broke it down and he told me everything. And even as a 13-year-old child, I had this deep sense that everything he was telling me was true. I could just feel it. I could feel his intensity and just his genuineness. And my brother, who was with him, I asked him about everything, and they explained me everything that happened. And there was a lot of confusion at the time, so I don't think they quite understood everything that was happening, and I think they were processing a lot. But you also have to keep in mind that we were a very tight Christian family, and not just our immediate family, but our whole extended family, the community really. And the way that we were taught was that there is no such thing as aliens or even ghosts. And as far as I knew, my dad, my siblings, my whole family, we didn't believe in any of this stuff. So when he's talking to me about these things, I know he's coming from somewhere pretty serious. And for me, it always angered me. And from a young age, I realized that I had to, and maybe it was a subconscious thing, but I always felt like I had to defend them, defend their honor, defend their integrity, which I think is a lot of the reason why I am going out and being as vocal and public as I am. I don't know, maybe it's helping the part of me as a child who was tormented watching them suffer. Maybe it's trying to make that right in some way.
Overcome by guilt, once again, Chris calls out to the heavens as he once did. This time, he's met with something else. An entity. An entity that he and the government refers to as the lady.
So, fast forward 5 years later. Now we're talking 2012. And this is the lady. You asked me about the lady. Everybody talks about this figure of the lady in my book. This lady got the attention of the Vatican, to every branch of the government, and to several foreign countries. They're all interested in this experience. So I'm at a point, Chris, to where I wanted to quit. I'm feeling the burden of being a bad father, and I brought this in my house, and my kids' lives are ruined. My boys are set back, and they become isolated and ashamed. And so on Easter Sunday, Saturday night of Easter of 2012, I walk outside about 9:30, and I had so much sadness and shame because of my children, what I was seeing happening with them. I was ready to end it all. So I walked out that night, I looked up at the sky, and I started shouting to the heavens. And I said, thank you for ruining my life. And so I quit. I'm never going to talk about this again. I'm done with you. Thank you for helping me, but now you've ruined my life, my whole family. This is what I said that night. I went to bed. This is Sunday morning, Easter Sunday morning at 3 a.m. I heard an audible voice in my room. Very loud man voice. I mean, it woke me up out of a dead sleep. I sat up in the room. I said, who's in here? I heard that. It was the same voice that came from that little being 5 years earlier. It said, arise, in this manly voice. The next thing I know, I didn't know why, but I could see movement in the room, these shadowy beings. They always look shadowy. Whatever it does, it can completely control us like a machine. I mean, it could turn you on and off, pause us like a video game. They had this kind of control, so I'm up and I'm getting dressed at 2 o'clock in the morning, completely dressed. Out the back door I go. Now I'm following these three shadowy figures. Not saying a word. I'm not afraid, but I'm behind them. And they lead me out to this dog kennel. One of these figures reaches out and hands me something. I said, this is yours, you must keep. And it was shaped like a 5-pound pack of hamburger. One of those tubes, it's twisted on, that's what it is, shaped exactly like that. But it felt like a living creature. It felt like it had fur that was prickly like a hedgehog, sort of. I couldn't feel the legs or head, and I was struggling to see it because it's in the dark. And so I dropped it immediately on the ground because it felt like it was prickling my fingers. And this voice said, no, you picked that up, you must keep. So I reached down, I picked this thing up, and I'm juggling it. And when I look up, these figures are gone now. And here I am at the dog kennel with this weird thing in my hand. I don't know what it is, if it's going to bite me or what. Can't really see it good. So I open the dog kennel, set it in, I close the door. Just told me to keep it. I thought, well, it's going to be safe there. The minute I had set that in the kennel, closed that door, this wind, all I can tell you, it wasn't in the trees. It wasn't blowing around the whole place. It was directly focused in front of me, a blast of wind, like somebody hit you with a cannon or a leaf blower or something. Blew me backwards, right into the grass, the leaves. And as I'm falling backwards, I see what looked like a translucent, see-through cow, bull, a cow, run over top of me, and I could see stars inside of it as it went over. And that bit of message is going to be in another book, what we discovered about that. A scientist that I've studied with a little, and he mapped the Great Pyramid with LiDAR and discovered that bull with the stars in it. A huge one is painted on the wall inside the king's chamber. There's a DNA helix above it. The only inscriptions ever found in that whole pyramid, they never found any until Robert Grant found those. But it was the same thing that ran me over, that bull with the symbols of the stars in it. So I land on my back. The minute I roll over and I start trying to get up to run, I get up to my knees is all I got. I push up to my knees. Next step was to jump and go, right? But I was stopped because this cow was not there anymore. But about 6 feet from me, maybe 8 feet, I couldn't reach her. But it was a lady there, and she's glowing, this beautiful bluish-white color, and lit up a circle on the ground, probably 15, 20 feet circle, and I'm inside that circle, lit up, and she's just floating 3 feet off the ground. There's this long white dress that had a collar on, no opening, white, sparkly dress, and down to the tops of her feet. And she was barefoot, I could see her toes. And this whole beautiful lady, she was as human as me and you, and as beautiful as the most beautiful woman you ever saw. And she leaned toward me and she said, "You know why I'm here. This is your burden you must bear."
You're going to tell this story, and if you do, I will help you. I'll always be with you. And from this point forward, we will allow you to film our presence and share us with others.
During another hypnotic regression, Chris goes into detail about what the lady's message was.
Yeah, so long story short, the first regression was about the 2007 experience, and it was conducted.
He had 4 hours missing time.
Yeah, it was conducted like a year later.
Yes.
This one is about the 2012 encounter with the lady, and this regression was done many years
2018.
later.
She said she was the divine feminine, the manifestation of the universal force of love, that she has existed since before creation, throughout all time, throughout the universe, that she's this force, that she is known as Hathor, but that throughout time she's gone by many names. And she said that there is a dark force that is basically scripting end times prophecy through the book of Revelations to try to manifest a cataclysm, to wipe us out, that they're trying to snuff out God, but that there is this evil alien threat, that would be the grand deception, right? And she said he has to tell a story, and if he doesn't, then blood would be on his hands, if something bad does happen, and that there's going to be a star alignment when the red star, Regulus, aligns with the gaze of the Sphinx just before dawn in the constellation Leo.
On the gaze of the Sphinx, in other words, before daylight. So before the sun rises, Regulus should appear right on top of the sand as a red star. That at that moment would be a shift into a whole new consciousness, a new knowledge. So I come home, I wrote this down and I told it to quite a few people. So they run these alignments through this program to see if it was even going to happen. And lo and behold, Easter of 2026 is when this is supposed to happen. And so I put that in writing to some guys in the Pentagon, and 2013 is when I told them that. And now they're all talking about 2026, 2026. You hear it all over. We've discovered, yeah, right. I gave them the date, 12 years ago. that something magic was going to happen. What it is, I don't know.
After meeting this entity, whom he calls the Lady, Chris describes several other miraculous healing events that had occurred. And the first one was witnessed by UFO researcher Grant Cameron.
Nellie gets up off the ground, and when she runs by him, I saw blood shoot out of her neck like a stream. And I've got this dog. I take her out the door and lay her down on the patio. She got a hole in her neck that long, and it's gapped open that wide, and you could see that deep. And I could probably stuck my finger that deep in her neck. And how that happened, nobody knows. So I threw my hand on her neck, and I'm panicking, holding her on the ground and trying to put pressure on her neck. Everybody, oh my God, freaked out. Grant's got his camera out filming it. And when I knew that she was dead, she wasn't going to make it. There was no hope. And I looked up at the sky and I said, Lord, help her. And immediately I felt her just go limp. And everybody saw it. And when I raised my hand up off of her neck, there was no more hole there. It vanished. And it vanished in front of everybody, witnesses, even when camera filming that.
The other miraculous healing event was when Chris was summoned to Washington by what sounds like some government entities to help a dying child who was given a year to live.
And word got around about that. And that opened so many doors. Next thing I know, without getting into much detail about this, I get a phone call in July. What are you doing tomorrow? I said, tomorrow's July 3rd. I said, the kids will be home. He said, we need you in D.C. I said, we? Who's we? He said, well, we have a young boy up here that is from a prominent family, and he's very sick. And in fact, he was given a Make-A-Wish by President Obama. And he's had every bit, they've exhausted every bit of care they can for him, from children's clinics from Boston to wherever. And nobody could help him. What he had, according to this guy was telling me, he had a mitochondrial DNA disease. He was born with the inability to eat and digest food. They always die by the time they're 13, basically. And so how I went from a dog getting mysteriously injured to a miracle happening in front of everybody to now I'm being flown up to D.C. to some child that I had no idea what happened with me, how that happened. I didn't do anything. Something up there did it, right? Long story short, that little boy is now in American University. He's about 22 years old.
He's doing all right.
Yeah.
I can't help but connect several pieces of Chris's story to the recent whistleblower testimony of Jake Barber, an Air Force veteran who claims to have assisted in the retrieval of alien craft for the government, who also describes an egg-like craft and recalls a strong presence of a divine feminine.
I felt like I was possessed by the most beautiful spirit I'd ever been possessed by.
Could this be the same entity? Or possibly even related to past religious events like the 1917 sightings of Our Lady of Fatima in Portugal?
Like dancing from one place to another place.
Where a lady described as brighter than the sun appeared 6 times to a group of children, and during the final apparition, on October 13th, 1917, she was witnessed by over 70,000 people, including skeptics and journalists. And it was documented as, suddenly the clouds parted and the sun appeared as a spinning multicolored disk, zigzagging across the sky and seemingly plunging towards Earth before returning to its normal position. The event, later called the Miracle of the Sun, was witnessed up to 40 kilometers away. This lady had also imparted the children with 3 secrets, the last of which was kept secret by the Vatican until the year 2000, but many speculate is still incomplete. Sister Lucia, the last surviving visionary, was kept under strict Vatican supervision for decades, limiting what she could say publicly. And Father Malachi Martin, a former Vatican insider, claimed that the 3rd secret was so terrifying that its release would cause panic. Could this be why the government and the Vatican have taken such an interest into Chris's story? I'm going to name an agency. You just say yes or no, whether they contacted you, whether you had contact with them. Is that
okay?
Something you're comfortable with?
Sure.
You don't have to name names.
All right, cool.
CIA?
Yes.
DIA?
Yes.
DOD?
Yes.
NSA?
Yes. And many more. NASA?
NASA?
Yeah. NRO?
Yeah.
National Reconnaissance
Yeah.
Office?
NRO, really? Yeah.
Ministry of Defense? England? The DOD of Australia?
These are all people who have at one point or another either reached out or come here directly.
Yep. Yeah.
Still to this day.
Yeah. And we're talking not some average low-level guy. We're talking about senior service executives from 2-star generals from the DIA.
Wow.
Here with family witnessed it.
Looking at orbs. Now, as much as all of this might sound trivial to some of you watching or listening to this, there is a very important component to Chris's story which we haven't really touched on, and that is the involvement of some of the most important intelligence and space agencies in the world. We are going to focus on a few key people with whom Chris has had a long-standing relationship. One from NASA, one from the CIA, and one, well, the last one seems to have his hand in every pot. Let's start with Harold Povenmire, or Hal. He's a former NASA scientist and a prominent figure in the fields of astronomy and UFO research. He worked at NASA during the era of Wernher von Braun, contributing to the agency's advancement during the space race. Povenmire also maintained a professional relationship with J. Allen Hynek, the astrophysicist and UFO researcher known for his involvement with Project Blue Book. Hal, before his passing a few years ago, had taken a great interest in Chris's life.
He came in 2008 in the fall, maybe September, October, just knocked on my door. Ryan and Emily answered the door, and he asked if I was home, and of course I wasn't. So they called me, and I said, well, tell him to stick around if he wants to be an hour before I get there.
I was home playing Xbox, and I'm in my pajamas and, probably playing Fallout 3 or something, and there's a ring at the door, and I go answer the door, and it's this really tall, he's like 6'4", 6'5", and I was a kid, so I was like, whoa, this guy's intimidating, right? He said, hey, I'm Hal Povenmire. I am a part of the press corps from NASA. I drove 12 hours from Cape Canaveral looking for the house of Chris Bledsoe. Is this the Bledsoe residence? And I'm like, yes, it is. And he shows me his badge, and it's NASA. It says press corps right on it. So I tell my mom, someone from NASA's here, and we get Dad on the phone. He's like, keep him entertained, bring him in. I'll be there in an hour.
Well, I was, in fact, very nervous at him. The rumor was back then, in those days, that the Men in Black would come get you, and that was all over the news and the TV. The Men in Black movie was out then, so we were afraid when he first came. And it didn't take long that everybody took a liking to him, and he with us, and he was there for 11 years before he died. Hal had a security clearance up till he died, and had been working with NASA for years, 59 years, I think. And he graduated Ohio State University when he was very young under J. Allen Hynek. And so that got him right in the back door. That's what he did. He worked to debunk. That was what his job was. He's told me many stories about even a couple of wrecked sites that he actually investigated.
And he was basically like the guy that NASA would send if a reported case was getting serious attention from the government. They would send him. And his role, which he writes about in his book, he would infiltrate the family, get them to warm up to him and trust them, and then he would try to covertly debunk them. So that's why he came, and he's told us this. He was open about this before he died, that he came to debunk us.
He spent days and days that he would go out and investigate the whole surrounding area, and went to the FAA and did all the stuff that they do, and he could never debunk it. And after a while, he began to see it with me. So,
has he ever sort of tipped to you any sort of blowback that he had from NASA by being your friend or by sticking around, or has any of that ever come up?
Well, yeah, he would often ask me to keep his presence quiet, right? And so there were many years there that we took the worst abuse from the neighbors, from family, and we couldn't tell them, they were saying, "You're lying, we don't believe you." Where I was hanging out down at Cape Canaveral and had scientists at my house all the time. We couldn't talk about it.
Next up, Jim Semivan. Now, Jim is a former senior officer with the CIA's Directorate of Operations, where he spent over 2 decades specializing in national security and managing covert and clandestine operations. After retiring, he co-founded To the Stars Academy alongside Tom DeLonge, focusing on the study of UFOs and related phenomena. He also befriended Chris.
Chris Bledsoe's experience, probably one of the most dramatic. This is just a wonderful, wonderful man. And I believe every word he tells me and about this. And not only do I believe every word he tells me, he attracted the attention of a lot of people, DIA, NASA, CIA, other agencies. Everybody wanted to get close to him. But he also met the entities themselves. And he also met the lady. And not many people meet the lady. I will tell you that in some circles, it's taken very, very seriously.
We've been friends a long time. It was right in the middle of the drones, right? And they're asking me what I was thinking about this whole thing. Kind of funny. He's the clown with teeth, right? He's that funny clown, little guy. He's a little guy. And but he has teeth, and we joke about that. And so he's very powerful, and a lot of people are afraid of who he is.
You ended up getting one of the most VIP treatments I think any civilian will ever get. You met a gentleman by the name of Tim Taylor. Tim Taylor, otherwise known as the Dragon, is an enigmatic character, to say the least. Portrayed in Diana Pasulka's book American Cosmic as Tyler D., he was in charge of mission control at NASA, has worked for Elon Musk as an advisor. He once brought Diana and Dr. Gary Nolan blindfolded an hour in the desert to an alleged secret UFO crash site.
So he takes Gary Nolan and I. Gary is a professor at Stanford. I had to be blindfolded. It's a secret place. It's in New Mexico. It was a crash site from apparently one of the ones in the 1940s.
He's had access to the Vatican archives and claims that his biomedical patents, of which there are over 40 and have sold for hundreds of millions of dollars, came to him as future memories, as he put it, implanted by non-human intelligence. He walks around TSA when he goes to airports, and he's once told the Bledsoes that the closest thing he can describe his job to is the movie The Adjustment Bureau. Wild, to say the least. And he's apparently even briefed President Obama about the Bledsoes, sending Chris Bledsoe a text with a picture of the Camp David stamp on a napkin, something you can only get from the president's personal retreat. Tim's an interesting guy, to say the least. You know, this guy's got 40 biomedical patents. He's worked with NASA, SpaceX, and all of the above. He's been to the Vatican archives. But also not much is known about him. It makes him a little bit of an elusive character. You're probably familiar with Diana Pasulka's book as well, and she mentions Tyler. We've come to the conclusion that that is Tim Taylor. What was your relationship with him at first, and how did that relationship change over time?
Well, Tim is a ghost, right? I think it was 2013, early 2013 when we met, or late 2012. He knew where I was. I mean, these people, the intelligence world knows where I'm at all the time. So somehow he knew I was in Pennsylvania in a log cabin on the Delaware River and just shows up one afternoon. Long story short, without saying a whole lot more, we met overnight He flew in one evening and was gone the next day. He wanted to meet and asked me if he could come to the house and meet the family. And I said, yeah. And 3 weeks later, he was at my house and had a laptop and a bag on his back full of credentials, and gave us a briefing that on the laptop that said for the Bledsoe family, and it had all the warnings and all that stuff. And so that was in the days when you couldn't talk about it. It was more secretive in the 20s, 12s and 13s and 15s, and up until about 2016 or 17 is when they first started mentioning it, loosening up. And I knew they were going to do that. In fact, that was the plan I'd heard.
Back then?
Well, I've heard plans of 2025 since I met Hal Povenmire in 2008. He told me then that they were going to have disclosure in 2025. That was the plan. Listen, there's a whole lot that I haven't talked about, such as NASA. Why was I at NASA? Why did they get me down there? How did I get into astronaut crew quarters? I got to meet the general. I got a special pin that only certain people have. And they wanted to know from me in other words, let's just say, they're just now talking about the plasmoid. Those are the orbs that I interact with. They're the angelic beings because they're not just, there's an intelligence there. It's created, some force created it. They were being harassed. Their astronauts and everybody were being harassed by these orbs and stuff.
You were told that by Tim?
I knew about it way back then.
When he briefed you, when he showed up to your house, how did he introduce himself? Like, what agency did he say he was from?
Showed us all his credentials. National Reconnaissance Office. He had a necklace with badges, credentials, and they were individual.
Wow.
Air Force, CIA, NASA, DOD, Area 51, and more. He goes to Camp David and meets with the president. I introduced Tim Taylor to Diana Pasok, and she was scared of him for the first couple of years until she actually met him. And they became friends, and then they went over to the archives, and there was a ceremony in my honor that they held, and they put my picture and the picture of the archives when they went in the basement. They actually put a picture of me between the books of Galileo and Copernicus down in the Vatican basement. So the whole thing was done as Diana was working with investigating me, and so was NASA. So it was bigger than just getting in the door.
So let's go back to this briefing. Now, this briefing was a classified briefing, I'm guessing.
I was told not to share, and there were stuff I was given or shared by email and by electronic means that I had to delete. And there were things that if I tried to email it, it would flag them. So, in fact, I shared something with my wife, a photo I got, and immediately I got a call, you're not to share that.
When he invited you to NASA, what did you feel was the sense of his importance? Did you notice that people around him sort of just opened doors for him, or what was that like?
His code name is the Dragon, and he carries a big fat dragon tattoo on his arm. And when I went on that base, he pulled out a temporary tattoo and put it on my arm, tattoo of a dragon. And there we went about as, in fact, he had another guy from the NRO give us a tour, but he told us good not to go over the speed limit, not 1 mile an hour, because they would get you. As soon as we get back after the launch was over, and we go and pick him up right at the mission control, he jumps in as a driver, and I'm not joking. We went 80 miles an hour all over that base, and everybody would just wave him off. I mean, he's just in control. Does what he wants. He controls the launches. They wanted me to tell them all I could about the nature of them and why they were doing certain things, why they were shooting rockets out of the sky. And I'm like, do you have weapons on those things?
There is a famous video out there of one of these UFOs or object or whatever it is taking down one of these rockets that they were shooting up.
I've seen it.
Who showed this to you?
Taylor did.
Following one such test launch, Lieutenant Jacobs was unexpectedly told to report to the office of Major Florenz Mansman.
On the screen was the film we had shot. The nose cones separate. The shaft flew out in front of it. We saw this as obviously reflections of light rippling like that. And then we saw the dummy warhead flying along. It's going between 6,000 and 8,000 miles an hour at that point, and it's on the fringe of space. And suddenly, into that frame, an object flew in, chasing the chaff, the warhead, and so on at the same speed. And in polar orbit, it fired a beam of light at the warhead. The beam of light struck that. The object flew up, shot another beam of light at the dummy warhead, went around, shot another beam of light at it, went down, shot a beam of light, and then flew out the same way it had come in. At which time, the dummy warhead fell out of the frame. The lights came on, and Major Mansman said to me, "Were you guys screwing around up there?" And I said, "No, sir." And he said, "What was that?" And I said, "It looks like we got a UFO." And he said, "Lieutenant Jacobs, you are never to speak of this again. It never happened."
Yeah, quite a few. Well, I saw things I don't want to talk about.
Sure. Understood. One thing is, in the book, there is mention of metamaterials.
Yep.
Can you tell us how that came to be and what happened with that?
It's well known that these orbs, and I say well known, the military knows it.
Right.
They've got video of it. Somehow or another, these orbs will often drip like molten metal. Drip, drip, drip. It looks like welders welding and, slag falling off of them. Mm-hmm. They do that. I was at a friend's house at an organized group meeting up 2 hours from here. They invited me there.
Mm-hmm.
And a group of strangers, and this orb shows up over her driveway, over the house, and dripped this metal on the driveway. So I got the metal, and
you have pictures of that as well, right?
Yeah. I got this metal. I had possession of it. I ended up with the material, and I kept it for quite a while, but some friends at NASA knew I had it, and they knew that I was connected to another guy up in Ohio that had some. Scared to tell anybody what he had, but he came home one evening and he sees a light over his house, and it took off. And when he pulled up the driveway, there's something glowing red in the grass, and he lets it cool down. He picked it up and put it in a shoebox, and there it stayed for 15 years. But he felt comfortable talking to me. I'm just an average guy, right? So he told me about it, and I let some folks at NASA know about it, and they wanted to go up. And so we flew up there and got a piece, just a little piece of it for testing. And then Tom DeLong and Lou Elizondo wanted some of it, and they called me, and I ended up letting them have 3 pieces. Well, it won't. A year later, I get a call that said, "Well, news to let you know you're not getting this metal back."
Wow.
That it was classified by the military.
You got confiscated.
And you just gonna have to chalk it up for one for our country. As early as 2 years ago, I had people coming here from D.C. telling me if I could get another piece of it, it'd be worth $1 billion.
They did send you something in return, didn't they?
Well, I've got quite a few different things in return there, yeah.
All right. It was like a pin?
Well, yeah, I can't talk about that a whole lot.
Right,
yeah. You're talking about the triangle pin.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And there's other things, too, that I
sure
speak about, but
okay,
that pin elected me into a club of basically astronauts that have experienced the phenomena firsthand, not in a sleep or in a dream or a regression. It was there in the daylight or in front of me, and you interact with it.
Mm-hmm. So you and other astronauts have these pins?
Yep.
You're part of a small group that experienced.
Yep.
That's incredible.
Yep.
What about the Vatican?
Yeah, they've investigated me.
They've investigated you?
Yeah.
They're heavily involved in the UAP issue, aren't they?
Hugely.
They have been for a long time?
Yep. From the beginning. And so is all the churches.
All the churches together?
All of them. All of them are deeply rooted into this.
And they're in regular contact with our government?
And with me. Yeah. A lot of them work for the government.
Wow.
You always hear these generals in the Pentagon, they think it's demonic. They don't ever want to tell it, right? Well,
right.
They're protecting the church.
Right.
And their belief. And a lot of these churches don't want the connection that is biblical.
There is something spiritual about this phenomenon.
100%.
You've spoken to some of the most important people in this country.
Yeah.
Some of the people that the public might not even know are important. We'll put it that way.
They have no clue.
And those people know about this phenomenon.
Yes.
And they know this is very real.
Yes.
And they know this is happening, and this has been happening.
Yeah.
So all we're seeing with this sort of disclosure stuff that's on TV, this is just like a horse and pony show right now.
Basically. Let's just say I've been to Harvard University and I've met with some scientists there. That's the first time I've ever revealed it on your show right now. And I can't tell you any more there, but I have met with scientists. I have been on their campus, and there will be more to come about that. So there are serious people around me that know it's real, that want to study this and get to the bottom.
Now, due to the overcast, we weren't able to skywatch at Chris's that night, which really isn't the reason I went there in the first place. But Ryan wanted to make it up to me and asked if I'd join him and a few friends the next night for some sky watching on the beach. And here's what happened. Okay, not even kidding. I was looking up at the sky. We were following something moving. Okay, I don't know what it was. Your guess is as good as mine. But right in front of it, this camera flash, this really bright flash, just popped out of nowhere. Stopped, didn't flash since, hasn't flashed. That was incredible.
Yeah, so I'm looking at you, you're vlogging, you're talking about stuff that you're seeing, and the video is priceless because your face is like, you know, your reaction. And someone behind you is like, what the hell is that? What is that? Look, what is that?
Hey. The Omi.
What the hell is that? What the hell is that?
Oh my God. Oh my God, look at that. No, I missed it. What was that?
And by the time I turn around, you guys are already like, whoa, you know, you're all seeing it. I felt like I saw it last. And I was just frozen. Like my hand was in my pocket on my phone. And I was thinking, the thought that went through my mind was like, don't take your eyes off this.
It was like a trail of red. That was like fiery.
That was incredible. There, oh look, something's coming back. Did you guys see that?
Yeah.
I am absolutely blown away right now at what I saw.
I've skywatched with hundreds of people in my life, and what we just saw is probably the craziest thing that I have ever seen with a crowd of people outside of my family. It was insane. It was like a long, oblong sequence of orange lights.
Yeah.
That was spectacular.
Yeah, I'm still freaking out.
I've spent my whole life, at least more than half of it, looking at the sky. That was a really big orb, you know, it was about this big, you know? So it's like you look at the moon. If you're, you know, you're so far away from the moon, but you're looking up in the sky, you hold your finger up there or a ruler, it's about an inch. This thing was that big.
Yeah, at least.
It wasn't a dot. It was like, it was a long, like on the horizon, it looked like several inches. This thing was huge. It was one of the biggest things I've ever seen in this space, you know, and, you know, orbs and crafts and stuff. And it looked like these massive orange balls of fire, which is what my dad saw the first time.
And then it happens again.
These strangers, complete strangers, they start walking towards us on the beach. And they're like, did y'all see that? They got the Coast Guard on the phone.
No, we saw like a row of 9. You guys saw it? You guys saw that?
Yes. Yeah, we saw that. Saw what he's explaining.
Yeah, I didn't see that. You saw it. I didn't see that.
And it's spread. You guys call the police?
Yeah.
Wow.
Call the Coast Guard.
Yeah, dude, you probably did the right move.
Oh, damn right.
What if it was a UFO?
Well, then we'll pull up some aliens.
Do you guys believe in UFOs?
Hell yeah.
Man, if anybody doesn't think that we're the only people in this universe?
Yeah.
As big as it is?
Yep.
Something wrong with it.
Yeah, there you go. So what's that one?
Now what's that one? Look at that. Now what's that one? Look at that. Look at that right now.
Jesus.
Did you miss that?
What was that?
A giant light right over the water.
Oh, really?
I don't know if I caught it on camera. It was like orange.
That was crazy earlier.
I can't swim out there and get them.
It went up and then it sprayed. Yeah.
I didn't see that. I missed that somehow.
You saw it.
I saw that, yeah.
That might be where we better leave. I don't want to get sucked up.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough, man. You have a good night.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Get home safe.
Ryan, there was another one when they were talking.
Turned around and saw it disappearing.
Yeah. There, look.
Look.
What is that? That is not a flare. That is not a flare. And then the girl he was with, you know, tells us a story about how her father in 1968 was with his buddies drinking.
Yeah.
And
at the same beach.
At the same beach, and 3 orbs went right over their head, and he passed out and woke up with like dots behind his knees, is what she said.
It was like hours later he woke up.
Yeah. That's crazy.
So my dad grew up here on Brighton Beach, right?
Okay.
He and a bunch of his buddies went down to Donnie Mercer's one night, and they're looking out over the ocean like we are. And they see these 3 dome lights coming in, and they start running up towards the dunes, and they look over them, and there's this bright light over them. My dad blacks out, and he wakes up, and is like missing time and everything. But he's got these 2 dots behind his knees, like he was abducted.
No coincidences.
He swears to God on this story. He might have been stabbed or something. But
You're talking to the right people. I think there's a reason we met on this beach tonight.
Right?
All of us here.
I think there really is.
Yeah. So we saw something absolutely anomalous that appeared, a row of like 9 lights.
Yeah.
This giant, what seemed like a craft. That went away. These people showed up, and lo and behold, again, multiple orbs start appearing.
Yeah, again, I fully did not expect to see it again. We saw it the first time, and it looked like the Millennium Falcon, and it was crazy, and I was like, okay, so that was awesome, but no way we'll see it again. And what, maybe 5 minutes later or so, 10 maybe, happened again when those people were here, right? They were here, right?
Yeah, they saw it.
Oh, come on.
They saw it the first time, that's why they came over. They called the Coast Guard.
And then after, there was like a fireball.
Yeah, and it was just hanging there.
It stayed in the air for like 5 seconds. It was like a rotating orange fireball.
And if it was like, I mean, because the guy at first, he thought it was like a flare, like somebody needed help out there.
Yeah.
But you would see a flare go up.
Yes, absolutely.
And then it would go down.
Yeah.
This just stayed there.
They appeared in the air.
They appeared out of thin air.
Stayed there at the same vertical.
Beautiful.
I've never seen anything.
I've never seen anything like that either. I'm having a hard time getting over it, to be honest. And to boot, we got an eclipse tonight. So not only is it a harvest moon,
and a supermoon.
And a supermoon, but that thing up there is going to be eclipsed in about 15 minutes.
I can see it starting to change shape. 944. Just barely on the left side.
Beautiful. If there's one message you want to get out to my audience that are tonight on a clear sky, they're going to look up, what's one thing you want them to know?
This phenomenon is here for us all. It's a beautiful spiritual connection. And I want to add this one thing. There's a pattern to it that you'll never hear discussed. I have thousands of people that write me that never report. And I probably have 8,000 emails I haven't even opened. There's so many people reaching out. But there's one pattern that's predominant. Now, you never hear this on TV. You never hear any experts talk about it because these patterns lead to conclusions, right? And that is that 99.9% of all people that I meet that tell me that they've had this experience or they started seeing things all tell me, because I'll ask them after they tell me their story, all right, when this happened to you, where were you at in life? Tell me what was going on. They'll all say, oh, my husband died. I had a near-death experience. My daughter died. My son died. My wife died. Or tragic stuff. Always suffering and always trauma. So what kind of force that can hear your thoughts and it knows your heart will care about you enough to come here to show itself to you and say, I'm here. We've been taught that it's evil, that it's got to be demonic. And I'm here to tell you that's not what's happened to me. And it's still here, and I've shared it with thousands of people, from my book to in person. And I see nothing but the most beautiful letters of people pouring out their hearts saying, my life has changed. I was an atheist. Now I believe, and my whole life has been transformed, and I see it every day. So go out tonight and open your heart, look up to the heavens, and know it. Have faith that something's going to respond to you, because it does. It's there. It never leaves. You don't have to go into no big ritual. It's all right in our thoughts. So accept that it's real and open your heart and love and caring for your friends and family. That type of energy coming from you is what causes it. If you walk out there skeptic, oh, blah, blah, you can take a hike. You're not going to see anything.
It's also probably why the government has a hard time seeing it.
Yeah, that's why. Right. Folks at NASA, I asked them, I said, why are you here? You've got all the scientists and all the equipment and space shuttles and spaceships and cameras and satellites. Why do you need me? Why are you here scaring my family? And the guy looked at me. He said, we see it, but it has absolutely nothing to do with us. We'll not interact or respond, but it does you, and we'd like to study that with you. Mm. So if you don't tell anybody that you're interacting with us, we'll let you on to some secrets. And that's what I'm still interacting with people from there. As high up as they get.
We'll leave it at that.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Chris. I really appreciate your time.
You're more than welcome. Anytime.
Thank you. Final thoughts. This is tough. And I want to start by saying that the more that this subject gets pulled into the light, the more we're going to be faced with conversations that are much like these. So I want to preface this segment by saying it's important to enter these conversations in the future from the most neutral point of view that you can spare. I've said this before, but this is a subject that is incredibly polarizing. Its very nature puts into question most people's core belief. And so I think it's incredibly important that we remain respectful throughout this discourse that we end up having, whether through the anonymity of our online profiles or, better yet, in person. Belief is an incredibly personal journey. It doesn't come from Scripture, and it certainly also doesn't come from a redacted file being slid across the table. Belief comes from within your own personal experience here on Earth. It is ever evolving, ever changing. I believe Chris Bledsoe had an experience that was witnessed by 3 other people. I believe his son also had an experience that has obviously left him, traumatized to a certain extent. I know for a fact that he is in contact and has been visited by very important people within the government. On a personal note, I do think that some of the things he's filmed in the past have probably a prosaic explanation for. I can't be certain of that, but I know that there are thousands of satellites above our heads. And I know that every year about 1,000 pieces of space debris burns up in our atmosphere, and that includes old rockets and satellite parts. There's a lot of activity in our skies. That much I know. I'm not an expert, so I can't tell you what the difference between space debris and an orb is. And I also can't tell you to believe someone when they say it is an orb, or it is an angel, or it is space junk. I think that is up to you to do your own research and find out. Now, whether that's getting some state-of-the-art equipment and a radar and a camera and a telescope, figuring out what that is, or whether that's just going outside and sending your love out into the sky to see if you can sort of summon one of these celestial bodies. That's up to you. I think it's healthier if we continue this conversation forever, because I do think the unhealthiest thing that anyone could do is stop being curious and stop searching. Use the information that Chris and Ryan gave you in this documentary and let that help nourish some type of newborn curiosity. Or let it empower your skepticism and go get some equipment and try filming it for yourself. But I think one thing we can all agree on is Chris's message of love. I think that's something we can all get behind, and that's an important message that we should all be sharing. We've got enough people worrying about the militarization of this topic. I think it's healthy that we counterbalance that with some empathy. Thank you for watching. This has been an amazing journey, and I'm glad to have shared it with you. Let me know your thoughts below. I've left the entire uncut interview with Chris Bledsoe for free on my Patreon. You can watch it uncut. And if you want to subscribe to the Patreon and help encourage this channel, it's $5 a month. I will be adding some extra content there about this very investigation. And obviously you have access to the entire library of backlogged investigations as well. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week for another episode of Debriefed. Peace and love.